Hello, my name is Chris, aka Suits. Welcome to an imperative development log. If you haven't already, you can sign up to follow my devlogs and get advanced notification of their release. Just come to the website, go to the follow page and sign up, and you can get this free instruction on how to make this material for having objects fade as you get closer. So to continue off on the last devlog, we went through and I was trying to figure out how to set up these systems that I wanted to do. And then just to recap, that main system that I was talking about there, the game deployment system, is I wanted sort of like that tiered approach to spawning like enemy AI around the world. And what I ended up with was the primary, secondary. So I ended up just calling them tier 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that all links into the game deployment system. And then just to recap again, like the whole purpose of it is that the tier 1 would be like a primary thing in your map, say like the primary objective, and then tier 2 would be like maybe a heavy defensive positions or something like that. And then 3 would be patrols. And then the tier 4 would be maybe smaller patrols or something like that. It's going to be all game related and game dependent on how you work that. But it's a pretty generic way to set up some sort of map. Even if you were making a first person shooter, like you're still going to have different entities, like as you go through the map, you might want to have like lower entities that just sort of come at you all the time, and then maybe a little bit of a boss guy, and then you might have a few of those, and you might have a bigger boss, and then the big boss at the end of the map. Like there you go. That's the same sort of tier setup, but a different use. For my purposes, though, it was definitely a lot more like, I'd have some sort of key objective, and then it would be surrounded by patrols, and then maybe some smaller 2-man patrols or something like that. And one of the key aspects I wanted, which would be configurable, is if this tier here loads, then I want to load all the other tiers that haven't already been loaded. So, if this tier was over here and the player come from this bottom direction and loaded this one, and then they hit this one, then I'd want the rest of these, if there was more of these, to load. And then as they load in, all those entities become available to the AI player to control, and they would obviously send them in to support that objective there. And that's sort of the link between. And then the way I wanted these to be configurable is you'd just put a data asset on the tier 1, and then that would deploy that would hold the configuration for the tiers, all the tiers. And the purpose of that was to keep it randomized. So if I only have one thing to spawn on a tier 2, then it would randomly choose one of these 2 tiers. And then same, if I only had, say, one tier 3 thing, but I've got those 4 points, then if I randomly chose this tier 2, then I'd only want to randomly select 2 of these tier 3s. Or one of those tier 3s here, and then same again. If I chose this tier 3 and I've only got one tier 4, then I'd randomly choose one of these. At the same time that's random, I also want it to be deterministic. So I want to be able to recreate that random scenario. So I've included like a seed, so you can apply that. So if you just randomize the seed, you'll get totally random results every time. But if you also say, oh, I really want to play that scenario again, then you use the same seed, and it'll have the exact same result. And I'll show you that. So that system's pretty much up and going. Like it's a bit rough, but it's up and going. And then the AI player system I haven't really touched. I've just got an AI controller still, and it hasn't really got anything in it other than what I needed to do this part. And then the second part was the optimization. So what I wanted here was I wanted to load out my entities in the game. I wanted to load them out with vertex animation, so static animations that, you know, like, so they can be instant static meshes, and I can just have thousands of them in the game, and it's not going to destroy performance. So a fully loaded entity like we have here is, you know, using the full skeletal mesh and, you know, the full character, and then outside of the, this is the, oops, that's the, to just explain this graphic, this is the player's entity, so your unit in the game, and that's its vision range. This red box is like a buffer on the vision range, so it's just an extension. And then this is the player's camera view. So if an entity is in the player's camera view, it's fully loaded. If it's not in the player's camera view, it's partially loaded, I ended up calling it. And if it's outside the vision range, or the vision range plus this buffer distance, it's unloaded. So unloaded can be either it just doesn't exist at all, it's just a position, or it can be the entity just with no animations running and no visual at all, like not even a static mesh. So if you're using an ECS system, you could just have this as a ECS entity, and it's just predicting the position based on whatever. So that's an option. So the way this all works is it's kind of linked to the tier system. So this is how the tier system works. The tier has a radius as well. So if you can spawn multiple things on a tier, so it has a radius that makes sure it fits all those, and you can use a EQS query if you want to choose those positions. And then if any of the player units' radius, vision radius, overlaps this radius, then it will load the tier. That's how that's going to work. And just to clarify that, if the player's vision is over an entity that's like that, that's not in the one of its units' vision radius, it's still going to remain unloaded, because there's no point loading it when it can't be seen anyway. So I've got all of this running, so I'm just going to jump into the world and show that now. So if we come over here, this is the setup that I've got just for a demo. So I'm just going to show you the tool. So this is the tier system. So if I get to come down to, so this is the deployment tier system. So if I throw that in, this is obviously tier 1, and I can assign the data here. So I can assign a deployment data, and that has whatever is going to spawn at what tier. I can show you that actually. So this just has a tier setup, and then another data asset for that tier that it's going to spawn. And you can have multiple loadouts here. They're all arrays, and you can add whatever tier and etc. The data layout will kind of be dependent on your setup, but I'll try, and when I do release this, I'll try and have some sort of generic setup that you can use for anything. And then, so what we do is, after we've placed this first tier, we say, okay, how many do we want to start with? Like over there, I've got whatever, but so let's just start with this generic setup. So I'll have, so this tier 1, I want it to have 2 tier 2s, and then each tier 2 I want to have 2 tier 3s, and then each tier 3s I want to have 2 tier 4s. So if I just click spawn preset, that's what uses all these. So it creates this tiered setup, and then once you've got it in game, you can then move it wherever you want to move it and set up however you want to set it up. And then all you need to do is apply the data, and it will choose the thing. Oh, the other thing is the data has the seed at the moment. So the seed is what, like it'll be a randomly generated number. Like you probably do this in your lobby or something like that. Have a seed for the mission. Whether it's player visible and settable is up to you. But the seed. So just to explain it again. So if I have, say I have a data asset that has 1 tier 1, 1 tier 2, 1 tier 3, and 1 tier 4. That's all that's going to spawn. So the rest of these points that I've got in the map are just to randomize it. So depending on the seed is what random setup it's going to choose. So I'll just bring this back. Obviously, tier 1's going to get its data, right? So that's the objective. And then it's going to choose one of these tier 2s. So say it chooses this one, okay, then we're on this one. Then it's going to say, okay, I need to choose 1 tier 3. So it's going to choose one of these. So say it chooses this one, and then it's going to say, okay, I need to choose 1 tier 4, and it chooses one of these, so it's this one. So only these three will be, these 4 points will have data spawn. And if you change the seed, you know, it might go this tier 2 again, but this tier 3 and that tier 4, and so on. But if you put in the same seed, so if I put in my original seed, I'll always get 1, 2, 3, and 4. It'll, depending on the seed. So it makes it replayable. You know, I really want to play this scenario that loaded like this, put in the same seed, and it's deterministic now. All right, so I might just remove this. I've added undo to the editor. First time I've ever done that. It's interesting. I'll just delete that one. So I'm just going to set that seed back to this for my demonstration. So if I press play now, so before we go back to the tier thing, you can just see the optimization thing. So the blue is their vision range, just like it was in the diagram, and you can see they're partially loaded, and as I come in, they're fully loaded. So they're not using vertex animations at the moment, they're actually using completely separate models. Like if I jump out and go in the Unreal models, and if I, so you can see the fully loaded ones are using my military ones, and I just did that for visually just to see, so I could swap stuff out. But you can see it's pretty seamless, like you can't really, text over them, but you can't really tell. Anyway, so that's that optimization. So if they were partially loaded, I'd be using vertex animations. And then as they're fully loaded and you get in, you can get the full animation and smoothness and whatever else. So for my loading, you can see now that that first tier and the second tier, oops. So they've both loaded. So this one loaded in, and then it also come into the vision range, and it's become partially loaded. So it's vertex. And then this one's unloaded, so it's the tiers spawn, but it's not in the visual radius, so they're unloaded. And then as I come in, you would have seen they'll change the fully loaded. Their AI ones aren't set up yet, so they're still T-pose, but you can see them change there. Yeah, and then just to demonstrate the tier loading thing, so that's loading, you know, like lowest to highest. If I change that seed that I was changing there to some other seed, you can see I've got a different setup now, so it's those tiers, but this is tier 1 now. So if I get tier 1 to be visible, it should load the rest of them, all of them, because it will load all the lower tiers. Like so. And that's pretty much the setup I got at the moment. It's obviously needs some polish, and I'm still working on Vertex, but I might have found some free tools to do that. And once I've tested them, if it does in fact work all good, I'll link those free tools that someone's released to help make the Vertex static meshes and animations. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate all the support that I've had for the start of these devlogs and the Patreon support. Thanks so much, and hope to continue doing these devlogs. Give us a like if you're liking the content, and talk to you on Discord.